An encouraging word about perspective. Have you ever thought that you had a fairly accurate perspective on something only to discover that there is a different way of viewing it? Let me share some examples. Here in Connecticut, we tend to moan and groan about winter. One time I was on the phone interviewing a Canadian business owner. As he was sharing his story, he mentioned that he went to college in Chicago. Without thinking, I mentioned that I lived in Chicago during two of the worst winters on record, and that I will never forget the minus 40-degree wind chills. The man on the phone had no sympathy. He chuckled and said, "Welcome to my world." Here's a man who has lived most of his life and career in Canada, crisscrossing the country year-round, and I'm complaining about my winters in Chicago. In an instant, his comments changed my perspective. Another time, I met a business owner who grew up in Vietnam. As a teenager, she was one of the boat people who evacuated Saigon in April of 1975. I asked her about the key differences between Vietnam and the United States. Freedom was her first response, which I was expecting. Then, to my surprise, she said, "Blue sky." Puzzled, I asked if it was because Vietnam was rainy all the time. She said, "No, it's because of the nasty air pollution." By contrast, the USA is one of the cleanest nations on earth. While speaking at a healthcare conference, I asked the attending physicians, providers, and staff members what they thought of the Affordable Health Care Act. One physician expressed grave concerns about the growing government bureaucracy. Then one physician, an immigrant from Russia, raised his hand and said, "Compared to Russia, the bureaucracy in the United States is tame. In Russia, there is no health care. It's all bureaucracy." In the aftermath of the Sandy Hook massacre, I was talking with a ministry leader in Mexico, lamenting the evil of this despicable act. He agreed and added, "Unfortunately, we are very familiar with these evil acts in Mexico. We witness thousands being murdered here, including children, and we see many people living under constant fear of being kidnapped or extorted just for running a business." His words immediately reminded me that for some people, extreme violence is an everyday reality. Sometimes we need people who come into our lives with other perspectives to remind us of the many blessings that we enjoy and take for granted. Just like human parents, God doesn't like spoiled children.